All right. Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of 4 Point Play. I am one of your co hosts, Matt Heuser from Swish Scouting.
And
Alongside
I'm
me.
Robert, and I'm Robert Alfonso with Baseline the Sideline.
All right. So, got a great episode planned for you guys today. First, we're going to talk about our topic from the week, Swish or Miss. That we had the poll that was out for people to kind of take a peek, and I had some really interesting feedback from coaches through phone calls and text messages over the last week or so, discussing what was a topic that, to be honest with you, really came out of nowhere, that we hadn't originally discussed, but from the feedback from last week's topic. Kind of led to this. So we'll talk about that right off the bat. We are blessed to have a special guest with us today for our interview for this week. We have Coach Burkett joining us from Tift County, which some people would say, where is Tift County, Georgia? So we'll let him tell us about that in a little bit. And we are excited to have him joining us here in Georgia as one of the high school basketball coaches in our state. And then we'll talk about, speaking of new hires, we'll talk about some of those new hires that are going to be joining us during this high school season. And lastly, we'll cap it off with talking about big men. All right. Number one thing people usually look for, we need bigs. We need bigs. So we're going to talk about your top bigs that are out there in the 2026 class.
But Coach, let's talk about the Swish or Miss topic. One thing is that many coaches have spoken to Matt, as well
Mhm.
as he and I have spoken about just the way we talked about how the transfer situations are taking place here in
Mhm.
Georgia, and how teams are getting players and you name it. But then someone came up, ironically, in an organic conversation on there should be a separate playoff situation for
Mhm.
teams with more than one transfer on their roster.
Mhm.
And I think if unequivocally on the poll, it's probably about almost 70-80% people felt that teams that had separate, that had a bunch of transfers to have their own
Mhm.
separate playoff stuff. Coach, what are your
Mhm.
thoughts about that having come from another state?
Oh man. Um, just off the top of my head, we have an um interesting conversation about certain schools in Alabama um that have transfers and uh and a lot of them could be like smaller schools, so and private schools.
Mm-hmm.
And we always wonder why rules are different in the private sector than they are in the public sector, but yet we're still playing for the same championship.
Right, right.
So and I think the little that they did to address that, for example, if you're a 3A school and um I think the way they do it, they in a private school and you're playing in the public realm, they count each kid 1.5, opposed to just one. And so even though in the public sector, their numbers could be, 700 kids, they're playing as though it's 1,050 kids, which bumped them up a couple of classifications. So it sounds like something similar to that. Um, and I know all of us want to address the teams that's loading up, but at the same time, I think there are legitimate transfers out there, and you may be punishing a team that's just it just happened to fall that way. You know what I mean? So it's tricky situation.
And coach, that's a great point because we talked about it last podcast on our first podcast on 4 Point Play on imagine being a coach that you
Mhm.
get let go at your current position and you have to
Mhm.
relocate and your child you having to your coach your child happens to go to said school with you
Mhm.
and you relocate. That's not fair to that the family,
Right,
and like you said, it shouldn't count necessarily against the school.
right.
So you
I,
you
I
you have a
agree.
really sticky situation, as you said.
I agree. I think, it's highlighted by the top schools that get these players, but I don't think it's top heavy at all to enough to warrant punishing your ordinary kids, because all of us may be parents, and if we move and somebody else moved from completely anywhere else from another state, and we so happen to end up at the same place, and I'm punished before I even get started. I don't know how fair that sounds.
That you know what that's a valid point. That again, we hadn't even talked about that because
Yeah,
again, if you're looking at multiple families and you happen to live in an area that has military access to families and multiple
exactly.
people moving in, I mean, for you could have a troop move in with three extra kids that happen to play a
Right.
particular sport, in your case, basketball, and now
Yeah,
you're having to play a separate championship when you had nothing to do. You didn't go recruit those kids. You didn't do any of
exactly.
that.
Yeah, and I think, it's highlighted by the top teams, which make it seem worse than what it really is. Um, what can you do about that? I don't know. Maybe if you're consistently doing that or something, maybe that's an out for it or something. But I've been doing this 25 years, and I've had transfers, and but I can tell you now, my good players that happen to be transfers, they in the minority. Let me tell you, I've had
True.
several transfers that that was my eighth, ninth, 10th guy. So you gonna
Right.
punish me for that?
Right, and that's valid. That's a valid
Yeah,
point because
yeah,
like you said, you people say, oh, he got XYZ player to come in, but
uh,
XYZ player, yeah, came in, but they're eighth on your team, and they were either not on
right,
the other team or
right,
they didn't even play a significant role.
right. So I don't know. Like I said, I think that's top heavy. And the rules, you can't do any. I don't know what you can do because, I mean, as a parent, if you have a child that has a great opportunity to extend their career to the next level, we as parents, if we're economically sound enough, we want to put them in the best possible situation to be successful. And I don't see how you can punish me or punish another school for doing that.
Great point, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's a miss, the whole idea of like an open division. I think it creates that hierarchy even more to a degree. Um, so, but that being said,
And Matt,
uh,
I agree with you. I agree with you about it being a miss.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just
I
creates
mean,
a
I
high.
think, I think, yeah, I think you can probably pick out about five teams that's probably guilty out of how many hundreds. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know if that will warrant a major change.
Sure.
Gotcha.
So, so, Coach, we're gonna switch gears and get to know you a little more here. All right, you're coming to us from next door, as some people would say, and we,
Yeah,
we want to know. So, I mean, legendary coach, right? Coming from Alabama, had a lot of success, long time. I saw your team play 3 times last year, and you guys came over this way of the state line, and was real impressed. And so when I saw that the Tift County job was open, that Tommy was retiring, I was like, man, those are some big shoes to fill. Well, they definitely
yeah.
filled the big shoes. so I so we want to know a little more about you, Coach. What brought you over to Georgia, and what excites you about this new challenge?
Well, first of all, I think that's a big stretch to say legendary. But actually, in Alabama, it's a little different. We can get to 25 years before we can retire. I know you guys are 30 over here. Um, and I think it warrant um our time to search and see if there's something that will fit, in another state. So we could double dip, as they say. So and for whatever reason, man, I know we played Lowndes County the last couple of years, and we played in a classic at Valdosta, and I'm telling you, I love this area. I was saying the whole time to my coaches and everything, I was like, man, I like this area. So when this job came open, along with a few other jobs, I just threw it out there and see what came back. This job came back, and several jobs came back, but this was the most enticing one. And like you said, man, I got a tough shoes to fill. This is not like a bottom team or something. This is a historically championship contending team year in, year out. So, um, that's, I mean, it has been that way the last, the job that I had is eerily similar. Central was a really, really good team. They're in the top five every year. So, I mean, the only thing I can do is just sit up and just take on the challenge head on, man, and just see if we can make the kids better and going forward.
Since
All right.
taking the job, coach, what have you found interesting when it comes to the position? Because, as you said, traditionally a very strong program with a tremendous fan support. What have you found that you may have known or you got
Mhm.
to learn since taking the job?
Well, I tell you, I had a lot answered when we played. I got a chance to see Valdosta and we played Lounge and a little different style than what we play. Um, but I think just the overall, just the quality of athletes on campus, and one thing for sure is the size that we have. And I'm coming from a place where we didn't have a guy over 6'3", and so here I get here, they got 2'6'8" guys. So I sure wish I could have had one of those with me before I got here. Might have had a couple championships.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
And when you talk about, obviously coming from two different schools, not having some size to having some size and some players on both teams, could you just
Mhm.
talk about your philosophy and what you're looking to insert into the program?
Well, we're gonna get the ball out and we're gonna go. Um, like I said, I don't define roles as coaches. The kids define their role by many weeks and months of practice. And once that role is defined, my job is to make sure they stay along those lines. And it's the shooters have an open shot, and it's after the first pass, it's going up. Um, and defensively, we want to make you earn every single basket. We're going to be in your face, aggressive defense, and we're looking to get the ball up and down the floor and get as many easy opportunities as possible. It's once the defense gets set in a lot of ways, they become a really, really good team. So um, I think just by the months that I've been here, I think we can play enough teams to play 94 feet, and that's what I intend to do.
Coach, and one last point in our 4 point play questionnaire here. Coach, could you just talk about what intrigued you about the state of Georgia and what are the differences in the state of Georgia basketball as well as Alabama basketball?
Uh, well, definitely, you guys have more, like for example, Metro Birmingham, we're over 1 million people there. But in Atlanta, I think it's over 6 million, you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
it's substantially bigger. Um, we haven't had any one and done players over there. You guys have several over here. We got a couple of guys in the league right now. I coach one. As of right now, I think there's um, three of the guys maybe in the last 10 years in the NBA from Alabama. Actually, from Metro Birmingham.
Hmm.
In the So uh I think like this past year, the last couple of years, I think um Hoover, which was undefeated this year, and that's who we lost to in the Final Four in the championship game a few years ago. I think they're about as good as it get. I would have loved to see them um compete against a top team over here and see how that worked. But to answer your question overall, I think it's year to year, honestly. I think uh That's a great question. I think Huntsville High School and Hoover High School this year could compete against anyone, anywhere. I think, and it showed with the teams that they played. And so that's a good question. But I think year in and year out, Georgia have more quality teams than we do. But I think once you get past the top four teams, I think Georgia overall is better. But I
Coach.
think the top four teams in the state of Alabama can compete with the top four in Georgia.
Nice.
Perfect,
I
Matt.
love it. Yeah. So we're gonna keep you here, Coach. We're not done with you yet, but we're gonna transition a little bit and talk about some of these new hires that are coming across Georgia this year. There was a whole
Mhm.
bunch of new hires in Georgia this year, and obviously the Tift County opening was one that caught a lot of people's eyes in a good way, and we're excited to have Coach joining us here in Georgia. But I made a list. They're in no particular order, so please nobody think this is like my rankings of top, all right, someone's was like, "Oh, he's ranked so and so," but you know, that, some names that just kind of caught my eye as off-season hires. I think are great hires for coaches. And if I don't say your name, don't think highly of you. I love everybody. So, but
Mhm.
um, Jerry Hunter going to Grovetown. All right, legendary coach at Augusta West Side who won 3 straight state championships recently and is moving up in the world, so to speak, as far as classifications go, and taking over at 6A Grovetown. I thought that was um, an eye-popping move, so to speak. A guy who's had a lot of success recently, right there in Augusta. That's kind of been a hotbed for talent, and in the 2027 class specifically, there's a ton of talent in that Augusta area.
So,
Well, absolutely, and that is a good hire because he's a championship quality coach coming into a program that has had, when I say championship success, they've won. They've, Coach Douglas definitely left them with some talented guys and a program that is almost like a plug and play where coach can come in with the experience that coach has and be able to put his own fingerprint into that program.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's gonna be a fun one to watch. Uh, One that caught my eye, Riley Campbell at Marist, who's a guy I want to have on the show here at some point. Was an assistant at Marist recently, but it's a really I saw they came to our tournament to McDonough, and I was really impressed right away and how the kids responded to him and eat up every word he had to say, and just kind of fits that Marist kind of way of basketball and being right here in Atlanta and in 4A right now. I just think that they're a team to kind of keep an eye on this season coming up.
Well, you know how they say moving over 18 inches to the first seat is always not the most comfortable seat. So, I'm wishing him the best on that because when you become the assistant to the head coach, the tone changes. It's like when
yeah.
you're an assistant coach, you're the guy everybody comes to, but when you're head coach, you're certainly the guy that everybody comes to that has to have an answer for everything. So
Yeah.
I did enjoy what they did. The kids did play hard, and because they're familiar with him, I think they should have almost a smooth transition.
And they got some good pieces, right?
Hmm.
The cupboard's not bare over there at all. They got some players that they're going to compete this year. Uh, Maybe one of the bigger moves in terms of mileage having to travel. Bob Martin, Calvary Day, coming from Pickens. Now Bob had a tenure down at Glen Academy, you know, um, recently, and then came up to Pickens. But I mean, Bob's a winner. I mean, he's kind of got that Midwest blocker mover style of play that he's bringing now down to Savannah. And again, cupboard's not bare down there either. They got some good players. There's lots of like obviously about the big kid. But then they also got some good, perimeter guys down there too. That they're going to compete in that 3A region down in Savannah. But I also think they're going to be a really competitive team come state tournament time in the private school division.
Well, what intrigues me about that is what we talked about just earlier today. Here's a coach who was in Pickens County, all right, and he's going to Savannah, the Calvary Day. And guess who he's taking with him? Not just his family. He's taking his son with him. So does he get to get penalized for having to bring his son with him, who is his biological child? All right. So, but no, to your point, Martin did a great job at Kings Ridge, did a great job in Pickens County. Certainly comes from, you know, strong basketball roots, Indiana Midwest guy. So I look forward to seeing what Calvary Day is going to do because, as you said, and maybe you may mention this, the previous coach's name, he didn't leave the cover bare for Coach Martin to be able to look, you know, build and do what he does. Because the one thing when you play a Coach Martin system against a Coach Martin team, he has a system that everyone is going to be fundamentally sound, capable of shooting the basketball, and the one thing they're going to play hard for, you know, the entirety of the game.
Yeah, they were very organized when they played. I mean, we ran a tournament at Calvary Day, obviously this summer down in Savannah, and they won the championship. And they just didn't beat themselves, and they got some good size. I mean, Marlon Knight's a really good player, big time football recruit also. Uh, Meach is a heck of a guard, strong frame to him. So I mean, they got some good pieces. They're going to be a team to watch this year under Bob's leadership. Kenny Edwards, Carrollton. Yeah, he might have had the shortest distance to travel for switching coaching positions, coming from Carrollton Central, where they won the regular season title in the region this past year and made the state tournament. But now he's switching over to Carrollton High School and going up to 6A and competing in a small region in terms of number of teams. There's only 5 teams in Region 2 of 6A this year, but they'll be battle tested. Westlake, East Coweta, Douglas County, and then obviously Chapel Hill. Mike Artis always has a good team as well. And so it's a region that all of a sudden has some really notable coaches in it. That's going to be exciting to watch, I think.
Well, and even while he may have had the shortest distance to travel, he's going to have lengthy traveling mileage when it comes to the, you know, the region, because he's going to have to go to Westlake and make that long ride. But also the fact that he switched spots with Don Bray, you know, Coach Bray, who went from Central Carrollton. I mean, he went to Central Carrollton after they basically switched. You know,
Yeah,
neither one of them had to move homes. Neither one of them had to disrupt their own personal lives. They just had to move their personal belongings from each other's office.
yeah, and I had that written as my next name, Don Bray. So yeah, the old switcheroo, the old switcheroo.
Exactly.
I don't know. Now I'm going to mention names some people might not be familiar with because of being a non-GHSA hire, but really well respected in the coaching world. Brandon Dotson to Lakeside Augusta, who has recently been at Augusta Christian, non-GHSA school, and they're gonna. I mean, it may take a minute over there at Lakeside. They're kind of restarting, so to speak. They graduated a lot of seniors from their region championship team last year, but they're going to figure it out, I think, and they're going to be a team to kind of pay attention to because he's a very well respected figure over in that Augusta area as well.
Well, the beauty about him taking that job, they're familiar with him out there, and he certainly knows the community. He knows what the community not only needs, but he knows what he's going to pour in. Everyone knows what he's going to pour into those kids. And while, you know, Westside has certainly graduated talented kids, you know, he knows how to be able to uplift that community and be able to bring that community together. He's a worker, and he's got shoes to fill based on expectations because of what they've done in the past. But if there's anyone who can potentially do it, again, it won't be this year, and I won't even go out on a limb and say next year. But within the next 5 years, you'll hear from them on a regular basis again.
Yeah, I agree with that. Next theme, he's coming home, so to speak. Bakari Bryant over at New Hampstead. All right, Bakari was recently at Doherty over in the Albany area and really, brought some success to that program the last couple of years. Went to the Elite Eight this past year in 3A, and he's coming home back to Savannah, so to speak, where he'll take over a New Hampstead team. And again, another guy that might take a minute to kind of get them back to their winning ways. But I think with no time at all, I mean, we're going to see New Hampstead become a name again in 4A level basketball, and that Savannah area. So a guy that just knows how to win, and kids gravitate towards him, and they follow him. I think would be a good way to describe him.
And I'll say this: you were just in the Savannah area. I've heard from people in the Savannah area. That area is growing just simply because of the ports. So as that area continues to grow with the migration of jobs and opportunities, hopefully hitting the Savannah area, he may, again, get it quicker than later, but certainly will build it to what it needs to be.
Absolutely. Uh, Names. Another name that's kind of popped out on my list because I saw him in action this summer when they came to a tournament is Loranis Davis at River Ridge. Was recently at small little Mount Zion High School over there on the west side, and now he's going to River Ridge. And man, like attention to details guy, I can tell, and they're going to play organized. And River Ridge, they're going to get better under his leadership, I think.
LeBron is there. Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, when you're able to go from a small school and then you get to a bigger school, you have to do all the detail things, right? And now he's certainly going to have more resources, but he's going to, as long as he focuses on the details, everything else should work itself.
Makes sense. No, that makes sense. Now, he's a details guy, I can tell, and so that's going to be exciting to watch the rebranding, so to speak, over there. All right, a couple more, and then we'll transition and put the spotlight back on Coach here. uh,
Mhm.
D. Howard. All right, coming over to Parkview, one of the state's largest schools in enrollment, coming from Greenbrier in the Augusta area, where he led them to some success last year, and had three guys that are going to play college basketball from that team in Greenbrier, which is not always a commonality that way. So he did a really good job developing players over there, and now he's bringing his skills and talents here over to Gwinnett, and we'll see what he can do with Parkview.
um, Parkview School District has always had some talented kids, and here's an opportunity for him to bring his style and his coaching philosophy certainly to one of the populated areas in Gwinnett County, and looking forward to seeing what he does, and if he could bring some of that work from Greenbrier to Parkview, those students and the school will benefit from it for sure.
Sure. Uh, Probably one more here that I have written down. Go with Wade Maudsley at Collins Hill, coming over from
Mm-hmm.
Chattahoochee. And I just, again, got a chance to see Collins Hill a couple times this summer. Former college coach, just again, his approach. They're going to get better. That team's going to develop, and as the season grows, they're going to get more and more dangerous, I think. And I mean, they look good this summer. I mean, a team that graduated a ton of seniors off that team from last year. I mean, they were right there. I mean, they had Southwest DeKalb on the hooks at the end of summer tournament there, and it was a proverbial semifinal game basically in Southwest DeKalb. I think it's going to be a top five team for sure in 4A this year, and so just really impressed with the growth they made this summer, even.
Well, considering that he got hired late, and even though people knew that the job was available, the school board didn't approve him until I want to say almost the first week of June. It seemed like so. He was able to put it together. The thing that he's been able to do for himself, if nothing else, is make his commute a whole lot shorter. And
Sure.
he's been able to be in the gym a little bit more, and really is going to infuse himself into the program, and look to be able to, once again, in Gwinnett County, that the region they're in right now has been run by the other team in green, which is Buford. And in order to be able to compete, he's going to have to really put them together. But right now, they look good enough, and I can't wait to see what they look like, in December.
Sure. No question. I agree 100% with that. And so we got a lot of exciting hires this year. And obviously, last but not least, Tiff County, Coach, thanks for joining us today. I'm just really excited to see what the Blue Devils are going to be this year. And even when you guys came to McDonough, like you guys really grew just in those 2 days, and
Mhm.
I mean, it's gonna be exciting to watch. And you guys are in a region with a lot of parity this year.
Mhm.
I mean, every team's got a good player, I think, down that way, and it's gonna be exciting to see what you guys do this year and watch your team grow. As from it's not how you start, it's how you finish, right? So, um,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
we're gonna transition talking about top big men in 2026 for this year's
Mhm.
senior class, and Fonz, I'm going to start out with one, and we'll switch over to you. We're going to start with Caden Lawson right away from Tift County.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
Yeah, we
absolutely.
can't talk about bigs in 2026 Georgia, I think, without talking about Caden Lawson. Probably the best lefty big man that I can think in the class. He
Mhm.
gets on that right block. That left hook is darn near unstoppable, and has picked up some Division One offers this offseason from Iona and I believe Merrimack. And I was talking to the coach from Iona. They're like, "Man, Tift County really is in the middle of nowhere." You were right, and I was like, "I'm telling you, you're out there, but they got some players." So, what, Coach, we could tell us about Caden just a little bit. You've worked with him, his development this summer, or some things you've seen. You've coached a lot of great players in your time. What are some things you've seen out of the young man?
Well, first off, I just put them under the gun, man. We showed up there with 3 days of practice with a new coach and a new system. So whatever you saw, that's what he brought to the table at that point. But I think in the system that's going to be implemented, obviously he'll be the focal point, and expect a lot of offers because I'm gonna expect a lot of things out of him, and I'm gonna put him in the very very best situation to be successful, both on the block and out on the perimeter. I think he may be our best shooter as well. So I think the sky's the limit for him.
Coach, talk to me real quick about when how has he received that, because we're dealing with teenagers that sometimes change is not always easy. How has he
Mhm.
received to your coaching and your level of expectations?
Oh man, I couldn't be happier. I mean, he wants to be good, and he's taking everything in. Very, very intelligent player, savvy player, want to be coached. And so, with that being said, with all the athleticism that he brings to the table and his skill set, he'll be very successful.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you saying that about him, because another kid that I've seen this summer, seen throughout the year, that is coach hard like you're going to coach Caden, is
Hmm.
Banks Portier, 6'8", out of North Oconee. Um,
Hmm.
just the load inside that a lot of coaches are starting to get to see him. He's probably one of the top, I would say, top 20 players, 30 players in the state
Hmm.
overall. Probably the top big in the state, just because of the things that he could do, his body and everything like that.
Hmm.
Those are the things that I was really intrigued with. What are your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, no, he was a guy. The first time I saw him, I was like, I like him. I didn't love him quite yet, but then I saw him again later in the season. Like, nope, I love him. He can play. Like he has really gotten more polished in the last year or so, and just does a lot of things that are more advanced, I guess you'd say, for a guy his age, as far as skills and IQ for a big guy inside. And obviously, he has a great frame, and he's well coached as well. Coach Rass is going to get him ready. And again, another guy that's just another really good prospect who's earned the Division One offers that he has, and I think he's going to pick up some more as well. So
And transitioning over, staying a little, going back south a little bit to Columbus, Georgia, and to Tobias Tolbert. I mean, I had a chance to see him at Columbia when he played up here this summer with us, and the thing that I loved more than anything is his energy and his timeliness. To be able to block shots. A guy who he runs the floor well, and he's not afraid to contest shots. Very old school coach. I'm sure you were the same way as a player, willing to contest just about every shot near the rim, right? I mean, I'm sure you could tell me that at least,
Well, it's been so long ago, man. I can't remember.
right? But no, certainly, he's a young man that whatever program gets a chance to see them, because very few schools have had an opportunity to see him, whether on film or even in person, and he brings a lot of intangibles that when you look at the class of 26 in the state of Georgia, he's one of the few guys, and again, we're talking about all these guys right now who play a traditional post position, but they can
Mhm.
also play a modern position of the modern part of the position, which is extending the floor as well. And I know
Right.
Tobias is working on his game. Another guy that I want to mention that people know of, and he's starting to develop a little bit under the new school that he's at, is Kevin Curtis, 7-footer at Gainesville High School. You know, he is the one thing that I heard just sitting around at GBCA paying attention is everybody's like, yo, how did that kid become so good? You know, or where did he, you know, in some cases, some college coaches like, where did that kid come from? And I was laughing. I was like, he's been here. He's been putting in the work. He just got to a place that has allowed him to, you know, continue to grow and put him in a position to certainly allow him to the confidence that he needs when you're playing alongside another big kid in Charlie Gershmel, who just committed to Belmont. When you're allowed to have that kind of banging in practice, it helps, you know, and it helps with a kid's confidence and just being able to see him make those moves. Like I told someone, you could sit here and laugh now, but by January, that kid is going to be one of the more talked about kids in the state. Thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, no, I mean he's really grown. I mean, from he's came a long way since he started, and obviously, you know, the height. He might be the only 7 foot like footer as they call him, right? He might be the only footer that's
Yes.
out there the 2026 class. Um, but I mean, he's really put the time in. You could tell and grown his skills. Picked up a Division 1 offer recently to Campbell. So you know, people are starting to finally see that growth that he's made, and you know, he's one of those guys that he's very serviceable in a handful of ways now, and he's not just a one-dimensional big guy inside, which is something that obviously translates well to the next level.
Well, I'm gonna hit the list with two more guys, and one of those was Javon Ramperson, 6'9" from Berkmar, who literally has caught fire, you know, since transferring back to Berkmar, has caught fire with Coach Witherspoon and his staff and has picked up a lot of traction during the GBCA, has picked up recently even another Northeastern offer after playing this summer. He has truly developed into a high motor, runs the floor, rim protector guy who certainly is going to finish everything above the rim. You know, he's not afraid and has transferred. He moved down here a few years ago from New York, so certainly as a New York guy, I try to look out for those guys and see how they're doing and surviving here in the heat of what Georgia brings them.
Yeah, no, first time I ever saw him play was actually in EYBL. He was playing with the New York Rens, and just caught my eye right away as a good shot blocker, just a good rim protector. And he's grown some other areas of his game since then that have, you know, warranted the Division 1 offers that he's got coming in. And I think he's playing with a ton more confidence now too. I think that makes him even much more dangerous and effective on the floor when he plays. And another guy that's just taken some serious leaps and bounds with his game, and earned everything that's been given to him so far.
And another guy here, 6'7" Cambridge, you know, Carter Higdon, who is almost like a modern day basketball player these days. He can handle the ball, he can shoot it, he can post up. You know, that's the kind of basketball players most coaches are looking for, both at the high school level as well as in college these days. And it's allowed seeing him and seeing how he's developed over the summer. I'm looking forward to seeing how much he continues to develop. But the one thing I want to see more than anything, that if he happens to hear this or even his coaches hear this, is get into the weight room. Because if he puts another 10 to 15 pounds of muscle on, man, the kid is going to certainly continue to turn heads and attract coaches, because he recently doesn't have really much on the table, but he certainly has picked up a lot of interest in the last event that just took place.
Sure. Yeah. No. No question. Again, that's another tremendous growth and expanded some tools and added some tools to the toolbox, so to speak, and definitely another name of note in that class that doesn't have a lot of size. 2026 in Georgia, so it's going to be slim pickings, so to speak. But the ones that we do have, I mean, it's a couple other ones too, like Javante Floyd over at Cedar Grove. Another
Mm-hmm.
another one that's got a chance to see in EYBL this season. Played with Knight Riders Elite. Has really caught my eye. Got it. Runs the floor really well. Another 6'10" or so big man. Obviously helps to have Manny Green by your side just to make that murderer's row inside gauntlet. To have to try to stop with those two bigs for Cedar Grove. But Javante Floyd's another like true five, rim protector type guy that is going to be a big name in the 2026 class here in Georgia. Uh, some other guys for 2026 I would add. He started. Well, I should bet he was at Tri Cities, went to Langston Hughes, helped him get to the Final Four last year. Now he's back at Tri Cities. Is Jaden London? Just a
Mm-hmm.
real high motor guy who just plays hard the entire time, crashes the offensive boards extremely well, and just doesn't slow down, so to speak, or take those mental breaks that is found so often amongst high school kids. Um, and just to get like I have him really high, to be honest with you. I like him a lot. And then one more gal mentioned, let you kind of say your piece on some of these guys. Not really a post player, but he's very versatile. I think we talked about him last week, but door, right? Over at South Atlanta, 6'8", kind of a Swiss Army knife, has some good skills, both inside and outside, and can kind of put the ball on the deck a little bit, has a nice mid-range pull-up jumper. I mean, it's, again, in a class that lacks height, having a 6'8" perimeter guy that can put the ball on the deck, can never go wrong with that.
No, you can't. And all those guys, from Floyd as he shows to, door, they're going to be impactful guys because when we talk about bigs, we talk about the impact on the game. And it isn't just always rim protecting. These are guys that are going to be in the flow of the offense and certainly a pivotal piece in each of their respective offenses. And I want to mention one last guy before I go, and I want to be remiss because I was really high on him, having seen him several times this summer, is Vincent Cray from Drew Charter. I mean, he's a guy who is certainly going to be required to play the post here in high school, but is got enough skills to play the perimeter at the next level, but he is not afraid to play the post, just like many of these other guys. They're not afraid to really show that old school traditional post play.
Sure. No, he impressed me this summer. Another guy that Division One schools have been checking in on, since he kind of blew up at the end of summer here and made a big name for himself, and a guy that has really put his time in too. I mean, he's really
Mm-hmm.
perfected his craft, and we talked about him last week a little bit. And just, I mean, you aren't going to find too many skilled, 6'7" guys that are as good as he is, in his understanding of the game. So, but
Absolutely.
but no, good. Again, Coach, we want to thank you for coming on the show with us this week. Really appreciate you taking the time and telling us your story and giving us some insight and kind of giving us a behind the curtain scenes of Alabama basketball a little bit. And just telling us your story on how you ended up over at Tift County. And we're excited what the Blue Devils are going to be this year, and look forward to watching your team. And again, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. You can find me, Swish Scouting, on Twitter at Swish_Scout. And where can they find you, Fonz?
BTS_report on X as well as on IG.
All right. So join us next
Got you
week.
guys.
We're going to talk about some underclassmen next week, and excited to talk about those youngsters. So we'll see you on the court.
Yep,
All right. Appreciate
absolutely.
it, guys. All right. Thanks.